We are now in the third chapter where Karma Yoga is on the menu. From the very start, it's about working or not working for Krishna. Arjuna is in a dilemma, and Krishna is going to help him to find out the best idea out of two ideas. One is not to work for Krishna, idea, and the other one is to work for Krishna. So Krishna is going to answer very nicely here. Let's see. He says, he's not going to say yet. He says in the text 3. So Arjuna is saying, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. So Krishna, as we know, in the second chapter, he actually gave a whole smorgasbord of different paths and informations. Hence, second chapter is called the summary, or the contents of the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah. So in that way, Krishna presented to Arjuna so many different things. And Prabhupada says, in the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddha Yoga, control of senses by intelligence, work without fruitless desire, and the position of neophyte. And Prabhupada even says that this was presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna therefore wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Sometimes when we have a class, it's good sometimes to stop and take a breath and actually consider what are we actually talking about here. Things need to be sorted out. So Arjuna, he asked Krishna for a timeout to sort out these things. Bhagavad Gita is full of repetitions also. Actually, any concept where you have a teacher and a student, there is going to be a lot of repetition, because it's said that we are learning by repetition. We take up the same thing that has been mentioned before, and we may look at it again. So Arjuna here, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them. So he's also doing this for our sake. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by a juggler of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness, either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions, he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a few things to say about this. First of all, to be inert or to be active. Yeah. So it said that actually you have the, what was the first thing Arjuna said? Let's look again. Jayashi chet karmanaste mata buddhi janardana tat kim karmani gorimam niyojya yasikesha. Arjuna, he said, O Janardhan, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruitive work? Intelligence in itself. Well, then it would seem like a Buddhist, yeah? Prabhupada says in the purport here, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he have very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter. Yeah, that we know. There was a lot of descriptions there that the soul can never be cut to pieces, cannot be burned, cannot be dissolved in the water. The soul is not dying where the body is dying. So many ways. And then Prabhupada says, a little bit down in the purport, sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the whole name of Lord Krishna. But then, without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the whole name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. So Arjuna, he also taught about this, as Prabhupada says here, as something like retirement from active life. And then Prabhupada says, in other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness and as an excuse. Yeah. So now is the time for karma yoga. There's no problem to be active. You can see inaction or to be inert. You can say that is actually the soul is also active actually, but in a different way. You can say if you say materially inert, then you can say the soul, well, Atman. That is true. It's not moving in the material. It said sometimes said it's sleeping. Yeah. And here you have materially. If you put Atman on the top, Atman, or soul, is materially inert. It is sleeping. And then the other thing is the body, mind. It is materially active. Yeah. And it's awake. Now, however, spiritually, it say the Atman is conscious. Yeah. The body is actually not conscious. You may think that. He said it's Archit, actually. This is Chit. It's called Chit, Kana even. It's a particle, yeah. So here we cannot write Archit Kana because the body is not particle, is gross, right? It's called Stula. Stula means Stula Sharira. It's gross, big, great, yeah. So it is Sukshma. Yeah. Let's just do like this. Well, it's very subtle. So in that way, so you can say Arjuna wanted to be here. Yep. He wanted to be in the soul place. Yep. But he needed to be here actually. He needed to be in the body actually. But aren't we talking about Krishna consciousness, to be out of the body, be released from a body, to be liberated from the body? The body is always the problem, right? So what is this thing? Now we have a horrible war, we talk about spiritual life. The obvious thing is just to stop this terrible bodily life and just sit and meditate. Isn't that what we are all about? No. And Krishna is going to teach us that. How to be spiritual. And do your material job. That is karma yoga. Yep. So by karma yoga, Arjuna will be at both places simultaneously. He will be in the soul, and he will also be in the body. Why? Because yoga let's just look at the concept of yoga. Okay, what does yoga mean? That means, well, it can have different meaning, but it means yukta, huge. I mean, it means to connect two things together. Yeah. You can say union. Yeah. Hence, yoga is linking us to God through actions with our body. Let's just say it like that. Isn't it true? Can anybody do yoga without a body? You ever heard about anybody doing yoga without having a body? Right? So a body is what we're needing to do yoga. And in that way we is linking us. So us is then, the soul to God through actions with our body, which then is you can say dharmic karma. Yeah. That means spiritual action. Yeah. So now that we have that clear, then we can take a look at Krishna's answer. He says, Lokusmin vidha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha Jnana Yogane Sankyanam, Karma Yogane Yoginam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Again, we get two options. He gives the process of Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga here. And he even calls Jnana Yoga as equal to Sankhya Yoga. And that's not flattering Jnana Yoga here. It looks like Karma Yoga here is better. As Prabhupada is translating Karma Yoga here just directly as devotional service. So the yogis, they are doing Karma Yoga here. And here you have the people who do Jnana Yoga, they're empirical speculators. Sometimes, however, those who do yoga or the yogis are said to do Jnana Yoga, actually. But anyway, here we talk about Sankhya Yoga, or analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter. But in one sense, they're also done by the yogis, because everybody who's into yoga, they also use Sankhya. So still we are a little bewildered. At least I am from this, but it will be clear after some time. Prabhupada says, in the second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddha Yoga. So the two different ones are then Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spiritual matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. Anybody remember that verse? Me neither. But, we have the Bhagavad Gita right here. We can look it up. It says, Tani sarim vani samyamya yukta asitamat paraha vashihiya sandriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. Yeah. So it was the train of thought that Krishna had before here was about a man who is controlling his struggling. You can say that the senses are very strong and they struggle sometimes to take over even the control, but they can be controlled then by fixing the consciousness upon Krishna. So Prabhupada says that the Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddha Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore there is no flaw in the process. To have intelligence, in other words, it's a good thing. How do we get intelligence? By pondering about what Krishna is saying here in the Bhagavad Gita. So he says in the 39th verse, let's see, Eshate abhita sankhye buddhi yoga tvimam shrinu. Here he says actually Buddha Yoga. Buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandham prahasyasi. Thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen, as I explain in terms of working without fruitive results. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So the analytical study then referred to was simply the difference between the body and the soul, which Krishna used at least 10 verses to speak about. Nahanyata hanyam mane sharire, the soul is not dying when the body is dying. The soul cannot be cut to pieces. and it's unchanging. What is actually not changing, that is actually what is eternal, and so on. And what is changing, that is actually what is not Sat. Actually, it's Asat. It doesn't actually have any tangible reality compared to the Sat, or eternal soul. So if one works with knowledge, then one can be relieved from the bonds of action. And Prabhupada again goes back to the 61st verse. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha Yoga is to depend entirely on the Supreme, or more specifically on Krishna, and in this way all the senses can be brought under control very easily. So what did verse 61 say again? It said, one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. It's called a matpara. Prabhupada has explained elsewhere. Matpara means one who is dedicated to Krishna. Yeah. So let's see if we can put it in a different section now. So therefore both the yogas are independent. What are the two yogas? The Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga. Let's call it Buddha Yoga, as Prabhupada is using that term. That's the two yogas we talk about here. Or actually, I think Karma Yoga makes it easier to distinguish between the two. Yeah. As a religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment, or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna, because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada says a little later here, he says, of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by a philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service it is simultaneously easy and sublime. So actually, just by karma yoga, just by working for Krishna, one can be pure in the heart. It's not that one has to deep dive into the scriptures. However, it may be helpful, unless one is very pure-hearted. One doesn't actually need so much philosophy. Some philosophy is needed, of course. It's very basic, that Krishna is God, we are his servants, we are eternal souls. Things like that. So next verse, na karmanam anarambhan naishkarmyam purusho shnute na cha sanyasanadeva siddhim samadhigacchati. Not by merely abstaining from work can one achieve freedom from reaction, nor by renunciation alone can one attain perfection. Prabhupada says, the renounced order of life can be accepted when one has been purified by the discharge of the prescribed formal duties which are laid down just to purify the hearts of materialistic men. Without purification one cannot attain success by abruptly adopting the fourth order of life, sannyas. According to the empirical philosophers, simply by adopting sannyas or retiring from fruitive activities, one at once becomes as good as Narayan. But Lord Krishna does not approve this principle. Without purification of heart, sannyas is simply a disturbance to the social order. On the other hand, if someone takes to the transcendental service of the Lord, even without discharging his prescribed duties, whatever he may be able to advance in the cause is accepted by the Lord. Buddha Yoga, that's what we call that. Even without discharging his prescribed duties. So Krishna is favoring devotees so much. However, other places Krishna is really saying that one should do one's prescribed duties because that in itself gives perfection. However, still it is given. There's a verse which Prabhupada used to quote in that connection. He's not quoting it here, but he's quoting it elsewhere in the Bhagavatam. In that verse from Bhagavatam, it says that if one just puts all his bets on becoming a devotee of Krishna, even though he fails in doing his prescribed material duties, still there is no loss for him, because he has put all his bets in the right place, in something internal. While our material duties, they are not eternal. They are according to our temporary karma. Next life you can have some other duties, or even later in life you can have some other. Just like before in life you also had different duties, if you just go back enough. Certainly 20 years ago our duties were not exactly the same as the duties we have now, at least in most cases. And certainly in 20 more years our duties will also have changed. Thus they are not stable. Krishna, he will tell us that our spiritual situation is stable, and actually has told us already in the second chapter, Stita Dir, to have a steady intelligence is to see that actually the soul is steady, it's not changing when the body is changing. To do the spiritual work would be the highest kind of work, actually, because one is working with something that is actually stable and gives stable benefit, also eternal benefit. The temporary things we do should be done. However, the spiritual things may be higher in regard. If Krishna is completely spiritual, and he says we are completely spiritual, then of course it takes a little bit of a what do you call this, leap of faith to go over to the spiritual camp, so to say, if we were completely in the material camp. However, one can start doing slight performances, but still it will help us to overcome great difficulties, as Prabhupada says here. So in that way it could be like a gradual process of becoming spiritualized. So keep your job, just do your job for Krishna. That's karma yoga, and that's where we all are at, in order to gradually spiritualize our existence. And activity is certainly something we should do, as Krishna says here. It's just completely natural. And everyone is forced to act helplessly according to the qualities he has acquired from the modes of material nature. Therefore no one can refrain from doing something, not even for a moment. And Prabhupada even says that it is the nature of the soul to be always active. Without the presence of the spirit soul, the material body cannot move. However, as we have learned, the soul may actually be spiritually sleeping. It's actually not material active. What is active, as we learn later, is actually the modes of nature. But you can say the soul is giving energy to that. Without the energy of the soul, this archit or unconscious, actually dull material world would not move an inch. It's moving because of the presence of the soul. But the soul in itself is not moving. Does it make sense? The dead vehicle is moving. Just like we are sitting in the car, we are not moving in the car, right? We're just sitting still in the seat. And the dead car is moving because we have filled the car with electricity. And we just press the start button, and the electricity makes the car move. But it wouldn't move if we didn't press the start button, and also if we didn't recharge the car with electricity. So similarly, in our body we have a certain amount of electricity called pavakaha. It's like electric energy, it's like internal fire. And we charge up that fire by, putting food into the body, which is transformed sun energy. In the same way as you would keep a car going by transformed sun energy in the form of, battery power. Does it make sense? Yeah. Yeah, here is actually the verse I was looking for, which says that whatever we can do on the spiritual path is no loss, even though we were not able to do, our material duties. At least we did our spiritual duties. This is very good. So the verse says, if someone takes to Krishna consciousness, even though he may not follow the prescribed duties in the Shastras or execute the devotional service properly, and even though he may fall down from the standard, there is no loss or evil for him. So it's Tyaktva Swadharmam Charnam Bhujamaharer Bhajana Pakvo Tapatettato Yadi Yatra Kwa Vavadram Abhudamushyakim Kuvarta Apto Abhajatam Swadharmataha. So the main word in here is bhajan. It means to have, personal practice. It's connected with the root bhaj, which also bhakti is coming from. Sometimes it's explained in that way. Devotion. So, tyaktva swadharmam, one can give up one's material duty and then take to Krishna duty, even though the Krishna duty would not be done 100% correct. We may say the mantra wrong, we may make mistakes in our performance of seva. However, there is no loss for that. Whatever we did, it's stacked up in our spiritual bank account forever. And then the translation goes on to say, but if he carries out all the injunctions for purification in the Shastras, what does it avail him if he is not Krishna conscious? So this sounds also like another verse which I also think Prabhupada quotes somewhere in Bhagavad Gita. And that says, Aradito yadaharim tapasa tatakim, naradito yadaharis tapasa tatakim. So, Aradito yadaharis tapasa tatakim. It means if we don't worship Krishna, what is the use of our tapasya or our, austerities? And if we worship Krishna, how did I say now? Na radito, that means not to worship Krishna. So na radito yadharis tapasa tatakim. There is no use for austerities if we don't worship Krishna. Then why should we do all these things? Because worship Krishna is really the all in all. And then aradito yadharis tapasa tatakim. That with a long A, it means to really worship. So in other words, Radha, it means worship, and that's the name of Krishna's spouse, Radha. So Radha, it means really worship. So if we really worship Krishna, then also we don't need to do tapasya. You can see the people who live in the temple who worship Krishna, they can live quite lowishly and comfortably in the temple, take sumptuous food. They don't need to stand on their head or lie on the bed of nails. Sometimes there may be some fasting days, but they don't need to be so severe in these things. If they have love for Krishna, they can just chill basically. And even one can be really into austerities, but if the aim is not really to have love for Krishna, or if it doesn't really bring that, it's no real usage, at least not for a Gaudiya Vaishnava. So Prabhupada says, so the purificatory process is necessary for reaching this point of Krishna consciousness. The purity in the mind or in the heart, that is the actual thing. Therefore, sannyasa or any purificatory process is to help reach the ultimate goal of becoming Krishna conscious, without which everything is considered a failure. So another place, Krishna is not really putting sannyas that high. He says that actually the real sannyas is to be Krishna conscious. He says, sannyasas tu mahabho dukam aptama yogata. Actually, these sannyas, it can even make one unhappy if one is not connected. Ayogata, one has to be in yoga. And as we previously explained, yoga is the thing to connect one thing with another. It's also connected to the word yukta, which means also to use something for something else. Dovetail, yeah. And or union, like in yuj. So in that way, the real idea is to be in yoga. How you achieve that, that's up to you. A path here is given in the Bhagavad Gita, and that is basically to work for Krishna, just like Arjuna was working for Krishna. One can also go through the process of Sankhya, like philosophically speculate and like that. However, the straight on devotional service, called also seva, to have the mood of seva bhava, it may be also called. That would pretty much do the whole job. And then included in that will be to hear about Krishna, study about Krishna. It will all come naturally if one has that mood, because that's what we do in Gaudiya Vaishnava practice. We hear about Krishna, but just to have the right attitude of service, it will make everything very easy. And now we have another kind of person, which we should not be, and that's explained here. Karmendriyani samyamya ya astamana sasmaram indriyartam vimudatma mityachara sa uchyate. One who restrains the senses of action but whose mind dwells on sense objects certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender. So there is a little bit of difference in the mindset of somebody who actually wants to be a devotee of Krishna and somebody who is using the concept for material gain. So the person who is using the concept of Krishna consciousness or spirituality in general for the sake of making a profit or getting getting a foothold in spiritual society and then build oneself up to become a guru or something like this as a means of income, but actually in the heart is not really interested in becoming Krishna's devotee. That would be a pretender. So Prabhupada says there are many pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness but make a show of meditation while actually dwelling within the mind upon sense enjoyment. So Prabhupada here says they refuse to work in Krishna consciousness. What it means is that because we have heard that there may be some pretender who seems to be doing devotional service but has some ulterior motive. But what it really means here to work in Krishna consciousness is to work under a guru humbly. Because the guru, by being, now we talk about a pure guru will actually immediately see that if the disciple is trying to bluff, yeah. So the guru will then call out the disciple and try to purify the disciple from that. Or usually the guru actually is not very eager to take such disciples who become a disciple for the sake of external show. So usually the pretenders, they don't really have a guru, they just are themselves, just making a guru show. Yeah. So Prabhupada says, Such pretenders may also speak on dry philosophy in order to bluff sophisticated followers, but according to this verse, these are the greatest cheaters. For sense enjoyment, one can act in any capacity of the social order, but if one follows the rules and regulations of his particular status, he can make gradual progress in purifying his existence. So here Prabhupada is saying that one can do what is called Varnashram Dharma, make a gradual process there. But he who makes a show of being a yogi while actually searching for the objects of sense gratification must be called the greatest cheater, even though he sometimes speaks of philosophy. So his knowledge has no value, because the effects of such a sinful man's knowledge are taken away by the illusory energy of the Lord. Such a pretender's mind is always impure, and therefore his show of yogic meditation has no value whatsoever. So here it seems that Prabhupada is pointing to the people who actually may sit even in public and pretend to meditate and do that for the sake of a collection, that people come and give them money, and then afterwards they're simply just out and out materialists. I guess this has been going on in many different ways, not just in the way of yogic meditation, but different ways. But now we see how one actually should be. Yastu indriyani manasa niyamya rabate arjuna karmendriya karma yogam asakta sa vishishyate. On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior. So back to karma yoga. We can be whatever we are. Just dedicate your work to Krishna, whatever outcome will be. Because anybody, whatever we are, whatever status we have of spiritual advancement, we have to work. Otherwise, we cannot survive. We need to work in order to get some food, or pay the rent, whatever. So let's just do that and dedicate it to Krishna. But here it says even without attachment. Well, the attachment may be a little bit there, but by doing karma yoga, one is gradually actually becoming free of the attachment. That's described in chapter 2 as param drishtva. One can have higher taste and get more and more attached to Krishna. And then one is superior definitely to the mithya acharya, the false teacher, the false example, the false actor. Acharya probably means an actor, yeah. And mithya means false. So Prabhupada says, instead of becoming a pseudo-transcendentalist for the sake of wanton living and sense enjoyment, it is far better to remain in one's own business and execute the purpose of life, which is to get free from material bondage and enter into the kingdom of God. The prime svarta gati, or goal of self-interest, is to reach Vishnu. Yeah. I think Prabhupada is referring there to the verse from the Bhagavatam. Svarta gatim hi Vishnur. That the goal of life is to go to Vishnu. Yeah. And that verse says, Natevidu svartagatim hi Vishnur durasa yebair artamaninaha andaya tandair upaniyamanas tepisha tantram urudam nibadaya. That those who doesn't have the goal of self to reach Vishnu, they may follow these kinds of cheaters or blind people who just lead them into the ditch. So sometimes we hear some stories about somebody who got into a cult and they followed some bad guru who led them into this array. Their whole life became bad because of following a bad guru. And that would be then because the guru is actually in avidya. The guru is in ignorance of the goal of life. So better then get a guru who knows that the goal of life is Krishna. And then Prabhupada says, the whole institution of Varna and Ashrama is designed to help us reach this goal of life. A householder can also reach this destination by regulated service in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so it's not just for renounced people. Actually, most of the spiritual life today is done by householders, because there is not many renounced people. For self-realization, one can live a controlled life as prescribed in the Shastras and continue carrying out his business without attachment, and in that way make progress. A sincere person who follows this method is far better situated than the false pretender who adopts the show-bottle spiritualism to cheat the innocent public. A sincere sweeper in the street is far better than the charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. Now text 8. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jyayo ya karmana sharira yatrapi chate na prasidyada karmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. Just give me a second, I just need to think about this. Yeah, so Prabhupada goes on to talk about fake people. He says there are many pseudo-meditators who misrepresent themselves as belonging to high parentage, and great professional men who falsely pose that they have sacrificed everything for the sake of advancement in spiritual life. Lord Krishna did not want Arjuna to become a pretender. Rather, Lord desired that Arjuna perform his prescribed duties as set forth for Kshatras. Yeah. So let's just see here. Yeah. Arjuna was a householder and a military general, and therefore it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the householder Kshatriya. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. Yeah. So just take it easy, just chill, do your work, and remember Krishna and be happy. What about that? This idea that work is bad because it's bad karma, have to work with materialists, the work is sinful, this and that. It's possible to work because Paramatma is everywhere. Who has arranged this material world? That's one thing we can think about. It has been arranged by Krishna. And he has entered into this material world as a Paramatma. Krishna himself is not in the material world, he is in the spiritual world, right? Goloka evanavashati akilatma bhuta. He's always there in Goloka Vrindavan. He's not coming here. He's not stepping out of Vrindavan. That's the statement of the Shastra. However, he sent his expansion here in the form of a super soul, who is with us in the heart and also externally as the Guru. And he also, manifests himself as the Shastras, including Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and that super soul also, is there in anybody who is trying to help us. Actually, he's guiding everybody in everybody's heart. So there's plenty of help to be gotten, and if we work and we think that now we're working for the Lord, then we are working for the Lord. As long as we dedicate our work for the Lord, that is called yoga, this dedication. Especially when we come in contact with the Guru, who is a devotee of Krishna, and we get that Guru's blessing, then we can even be more fixed in yoga, usually because we get our shraddha, our faith will be heightened by the association of the sadhu. It said it goes through the progress of adau shraddha tata sadhu sangha. And even the first kind of shraddha is explained to be coming from association of the devotee. But in the sadhu sangha, it becomes even more, because then we enroll under that devotee to learn actually how to practice spiritual life, Krishna consciousness. So then the shraddha is even bigger, and then we do bhajana kriya you do practical daily life. For example, we can take a vow to chant a certain number of Hare Krishna mantras. You can become vegetarian. We can follow, so many rules to shape up our life, to practice on the platform of Sattva Guna, to clear our consciousness and actually be able to meditate on Krishna. And then our Shraddha becomes even stronger. So stronger and stronger faith means also Krishna is more and more in our life. The type of work we do is not actually the most important. The most important is the faith we have in Krishna. Does it make sense? It's not that we think our work is bad because there are no devotees there on the work. Your co-workers are not devotees of Krishna. The boss is not a devotee of Krishna. And the work itself is not direct service to Krishna. Say you're working in a company that produces cars. It's a material, what do you call this? Enterprise. Yeah, it's not a spiritual enterprise. Let's be real. It's not a material enterprise. Is it a spiritual enterprise? It can be in our own heart. If we think that our work is given by Krishna for our purification, He is there. He didn't leave us. He's still with us doing the so-called material work. If we have Buddhi, we'll remember what Krishna says. He is everywhere. And He's directing the hearts. He's directing the wanderings of all living entities. Some or other, He directed us to start in the work in the car factory, car enterprise. And the boss also is directed by Krishna to have the job as the boss. The boss is eating meat. How can we serve the boss? We're not serving the boss. We're not serving any body. We're serving the spirit. We're serving Krishna. With our spiritual mind, we are creating a spiritual situation. That's the whole idea of yoga. By purification of the mind, we can perceive of Krishna, and we can then do service to Him. Otherwise, we can only serve matter. If we think we are the body and we don't think we are the soul, then it's just the matter serving matter. And it's definitely a mundane situation. However, if we realize, or try to realize, that we are not matter, we are spirit, we can do service to Krishna anywhere, absolutely, at all times. Yeah. So renunciation? No, it's not necessary. If you are devotionally inclined, you can do devotion to Krishna in any situation. Because part of devotion is that it can never be blocked. It can never be hampered. Love or prema is independent of everything. So Prabhupada says, so-called renunciation for the purpose of maintenance is never approved by the Lord, nor by any religious scripture. After all, one has to maintain one's body and soul together by some work. Work should not be given up capriciously to have purification of materialistic propensities. So rather stay in the, you could say, a material job, but purify the propensities. I can purify my materialistic propensities, even though I have a material job. Is it possible? Must be possible. Okay, so get a spiritual job. Where can you get it? Can you look in Finn, in the job offers? Here's a spiritual job, right? I have tried to find it, I cannot find it. There's no spiritual jobs. I'm sorry. But then you can join the temple. Yeah, that's true actually. So that's the other option. That will be more of a renounced life. One may not be able to live like that for the rest of one's life, but one can live like that as long as one can, and learn the core practices of direct service to Krishna. Usually that is centered around a temple, or you can say the altar, or around preaching, outreach activities. But still, even in that situation, we may unfortunately still have materialistic propensities. They may become more clear to us when we are in that situation. But to get rid of them may not even be so easy after many years, even still. They may be there. Actually, it's said that it's actually not about that, where you are, it's about ourselves, where we are internally. Otherwise, the whole thing would be that the monks and nuns are always the most pure devotees. But in reality, we don't really see that. We see that, they can be, pure devotees in any class of people. Monks, nuns, grahastas. It's about, the heart more than the outward situation. However, if one really, really doesn't like to work for anything which involves, non-devotees or non-spiritualists, one may want to live in a temple. And one can be happy there. One may actually have the adhikar for that. Adhikar means to have a strong propensity or nature for something. So in that way, one may actually be fitting better to live in such an environment as a temple environment. However, it requires a certain amount of sattva guna or goodness to be able to do the simple lifestyle required to live in such a way. And then back to Arjuna, he didn't have that. He didn't have the adhikar. I'll write it up so you know what it means. Adhikara is important. Yeah. So what does adhikara mean? You can say proclivity, propensity, natural ability even. Yeah. For example, it said some people are born with a natural adhikar or ability to play a musical instrument. You try to put another person to play the piano, will not be able. Simply doesn't have the adhikar. So Arjuna did not have the adhikara to be a monk. Yeah. His proclivity was to fight. Yeah. A monk doesn't fight, or does it? You hear about warrior monks, but okay, at least a Vaishnava monk, he doesn't fight. At least I didn't hear when you did. Okay, let's call Brahmana then. At least the Brahmana doesn't fight. Yeah. Yeah. To be a renounced Brahmana. Yeah. 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 Okay, so next verse. Yagyartat karmanon yatra lokayam karma bandhana tat artam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So the purport: since one has to work even for the simple maintenance of the body, the prescribed duties for a particular social position and quality are so made that purpose can be fulfilled. Yagya means Lord Vishnu or sacrificial performances. Yeah, so this is one of the famous verses. Where Krishna is saying work for Vishnu. But that's him. But he's giving a general instruction. So Prabhupada says here, the Vedas enjoin Yagya by Vishnu. Krishna is saying work for Yagya. But Yagya is another name of Vishnu. Yeah. And the other work is giving bondage. And then Krishna says, Oh, sorry. Saha yagya praja shishtva puruvacha prajapati anena prasavisyadvam esha vostu ishtakamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yagya sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." Yeah. So this is interesting. From the very beginning of the creation, Saha Yagya. Saha means with. So together with the creation itself also came the process of doing sacrifice. So that means that from our very birth, to do sacrifice is really intrinsical to that of just living here. You have to do sacrifice. And that Krishna will say later in the Bhagavad Gita, that nobody can be happy without doing sacrifices. And it's even been called here like a desire cow. Ishtakama duk. Something like the Surabhi cow, or the celestial cow, which yields all desires. So doing sacrifice will give us everything we want. So what is the sacrifice we are asked to do in the Hare Krishna mantra? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that is the mantra which we see here in the age. Here is it, last part of the purport. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan Yaga, the chanting of names of God, is recommended by the Vedic scriptures. And this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya. That's the incarnation of Krishna. For the deliverance of all men in this age, Sankirtan Yaga and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna in his devotional form as Lord Chaitanya is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam as follows, with special reference to the Sankirtan Yaga. Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sango Pangashtra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayai Yajantihi Samedashaha. Yes. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came, and he came together with all his friends, associates, and he was just dancing, chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And he even gave another verse which said that in the Kali Yuga, this is the way to practice. And all of the practices, religious practices you may want to do, Hare Krishna mantra is the most powerful of them all. That was that verse which also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking. He says, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam, kalam nasteva, nasteva, nasteva gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, there is actually no other way than chanting the Hare Nama, names of Hare, which is a reference to the Hare Krishna mantra. Because Hare is mentioned, or Hare is mentioned